Hey everybody, I'm Garcia, and today I'm taking a look at a small card game right here called Carta, Impera, Victoria. In this game, the players are going to be slowly building up a tableau in front of them by playing cards, trading out those cards, and triggering powers on those cards by collecting large sets or possibly by discarding the card completely for a different activity, for a different action. Once you have enough of one kind of card, you straight up win the game. If that doesn't come to pass and you run out the deck, then there's going to be some scoring involved. But usually, someone just wins outright. So, let's cut to the board. Let me give you a look at how the game works. We'll come on back up here after that, and I'll tell you what I think of it. To set up the game, we're going to shuffle up the decks and then set them up in the appropriate order. The H1 on top, then 2s, then 3s, and you're going to give each player 3 cards. You're ready to begin. Everybody has one of these boards in front of them just as an aid as to how to play the game. And on your turn, you are going to play a card. That's mandatory. You are going to then use powers if you have any. You can do that or not do it. And then you are going to draw back up to your hand size, which begins at 3. And you have to do that part as well. The objective of the game is to have enough of one color card to win the game outright. And if that doesn't happen, when the deck runs out, then everybody takes one final turn. And then you'll see which of the different colors you control, meaning you have more than other players. You get a point per card there. And then most points wins at the end of the game. So the cards are going to have just a piece of artwork and a symbol in the corner that tells you what they belong to. So we've got the military cards here in my hand, and I have one economy card. So on my turn, I play a card, and I may then do the powers that are in front of me if I want to. So the powers come in 2 different kinds. You have the passive powers, which simply mean you have to have enough of one kind to trigger them. In a game with 3 players, that means I need to have 3 cards of one color to trigger that power, and 5 to get the souped up power, which basically just means I can do the same thing but twice. Or the other kind of power that's not a passive power is a discard power, which means I would get rid of this and trigger a different power. So, and once, by the way, someone gets to, in 3 players, once someone gets to 7 of the same color, they just win the game outright. So I'm going to play this. I don't have any of the passive powers because I don't have enough yet. And I could discard this to trigger that power. All of those are right here, as you can see there on the screen. And so that's all I'm going to do for now. And then I'll draw back up. It's my opponent's turn over here. They are going to play that card. They're not ready for anything else yet. They draw back up. This player is going to play one of these cards, a religion card. And they are going to go ahead and discard this to trigger the power, all right? So they discard that. Religion says, take all the cards from another player and then return an equal number to them. So they're going to take my 3 cards. They will combine it with their own, and they are going to return 3 to me. So they'll keep 1, 2, and those 2, and then they'll return these 3 back to me. Actually, they'll take my 2 military. How about that? And return these to me. And then they draw back up. Comes back to me. I am going to play one of these economy cards and then draw back up, even though I could do powers now. I am not going to do that. This continues until the players have built up a few more cards. So let's go ahead and dig in here and give the players a few more cards that match. So I'm going to give myself 3 military there. My opponents are going to have a few different cards. So that player's going to have that. And then I'm also going to give this player over here one more of, how about that? There we go. So let's say it's my turn. I've got my 3 cards in my hand, which we'll say are these 3 cards. And then I begin my turn. So I'm going to play a card, such as this one here. Then I get to trigger passive powers. I now have 3 military. The passive power is I get to discard a card from my hand. I'm holding these 2. I'm going for military cards. I'm going to discard this so I can draw more of them. Then I get to do the discard powers. If I discard a military card, I can... each player is going to have to discard 1 card of the same domain. I pick the domain. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll discard this, and I'm going to pick this domain. I discard it. This player discards 1, and this player discards 1. They don't have 1, so they're fine. And then I could do a discard power for this one here, which is, again, take the cards from someone else and give them back the same number, but I won't do that. I'm done. I'm holding a single card, so I draw 1, and I draw 2, which begins digging into the H2 deck. This is a great hand because it's going to let me run that military up. The different powers, as you see, I'm just going to quickly go over them. So military is discard cards from your hand, or you can, as I just showed you, force players to get rid of things from the board. Religion increases your hand size. Once you have 3 of them, your hand size is 5. Once you have 5 of them, again in a 3-player game, your hand size is 7. So +2, +2. If you discard 1, you can take cards and then return the same number. Economy. You can discard 1 from play and add a new one to your tableau. If you have enough, you can do that twice. If you discard 1, you can prevent a player from playing a card in the domain of your choice. So the way that works is, if I discard this, I would put it face down there like so, and that player next turn cannot play there. At the end of their turn, they can then get rid of that. Science is going to allow me to exchange a card from my hand with 1 on the tableau. I can do it twice if I have enough, or I could discard 1 to draw 5 cards and then discard 5 cards, making the hand I want to make. Culture I'll come back to. Utopia, you can take a card from the discard pile. If you have enough, you can take 2 cards from the discard pile. And if you discard, you can increase a player's hegemony victory condition by 1. What that means is, if I get rid of one of those Utopia cards, which show up later for the most part, I can take one of these, I can discard it from my tableau and stick it under a pile. That player now needs 1 more than 7 to win by running those. So they're going to need 8 of those. If I do it again, they now need 9 of those, and so on. Lastly, culture, which I skipped. If you have more culture than anyone else, you get this nice metal token, and once per turn, you can copy someone else's power. So you could, put this in front of me, let's say. That player could do that, and they could copy my military power, which allows them to discard a card in this case. It does not matter how many of these you have to trigger that. You just have to have more than everyone else. This continues until you win by one of the 2 methods, and then the game's over, and either someone wins right away through the hegemony way of winning, or you go to the victory points and figure out who the winner is. And that's all there is to it. Very straightforward, for the most part, card game. So let's go back up top. Let me tell you how this feels when you're playing and what I think of it. All right, so there you go. That is CIV. Let's talk about it. Thematic Ties is the game original. Is it well implemented, that theme? No, not really. I don't think it's a bad use of this theme, but it really could have been anything. The powers that the cards translate to, some of them are very nice. Some of them certainly make sense. The military, for example, is very straightforward. It certainly attacks the players. Some of the other ones do a lot of card manipulation. Pick up a card and play a new card. Discard a card and play a new card. Those could have come from the same thing. And so the theme is there. It makes for nice artwork, which I'll talk about in 1 second. But it could have been anything. The aesthetics, component quality, congruent artwork, things like that. Cards are very nice, large format cards, and the look of the game is neat. It might be a bit of an acquired taste. Some folks might dislike it. You can quickly make up your mind about that, of course, just by looking at it. I like the look of the game. The cards are ultimately just a symbol or a color. Nothing else on the cards matters whatsoever, but they look good, and the game is going to have a nice look on the board as you are building up your groups and so forth, And then the 8 sheets are well done. They help you remember what everything is. They don't out and out teach you the game. You will still need to, reference a couple of things, but they are very well done. The replayability, does the game scale well, or are there new things to discover? I think it scales fine to whatever number of players you want to play with. As far as the new things to discover from game to game, no, not really. I think after a couple of games of this, you've got it. Like I said, most of the powers are basically grow your hand size, play more cards, or swap out cards, draw a new hand and call that hand to be able to play more cards. There's just not a lot of depth here. It's a very straightforward game. It's a really light game at the end of the day, with a little more going on, as far as the activities you can take. But it all sort of boils down to, it kind of feels like a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing at the end of the day. And that's sort of how I feel ultimately about the whole thing. Game length, is it interesting the whole time? Does it get repetitive? It's a little long. I mean, a few minutes long, especially if no one wins kind of early. The decks take a bit to go through. So it could get repetitive towards the end of the game, where I try to get close, you destroy a card or two, you stick one of those cards in there, that means I have to get an extra one, that sort of thing. The one cool aspect of that is at some point, if you see that the game is not going to end, or you think that the game is not going to end because someone gets to the 7 or 8 or 9 cards they need, whatever, then you can try to have a lot of cards in a few different groups to be able to get victory points out of those. That's cool. When you make that switch to not just collecting one kind of card, but several kinds of cards, and balance that out to score, that can be an interesting point. Ease of play. Is the game fiddly? Are there any extraneous rules? Is it easy to teach? I think it's pretty easy to teach. It's a straightforward game. Everybody has that 8 in front of them, so that's going to go a long way. It's not fiddly. There's not a lot extra going on. It is kind of weird they included a metal coin in the box for basically no reason. I mean, really, there is no reason. You take the metal coin, if you are the one that can copy a power, and you put it in front of the stack you copied. That coin stays there until it comes back to you, and assuming you still control the most of that kind of card, you can move the coin and copy something else. There's not much to it, so that seems weird, but the game is not difficult to figure out. It's not fiddly. Lastly, tactics and strategy. Is it too lucky? Is it balanced? Are there interesting choices? At the beginning of the game with a hand of only 3 cards, yeah, it could be too lucky if you're not drawing exactly what you need, but you'll quickly build up enough of a tableau to let you, again, trigger some power that lets you move stuff around. I haven't really witnessed too many folks playing this feel like, oh man, I can't really do anything. You can discard cards and trigger powers to get your hand where you need it to be, and then just sort of start messing each other over so you don't quite make it to the number of cards you need. Are those interesting choices, is the question. I don't know. I don't think so. It does not feel particularly interesting to play the game, and it's sort of, ultimately, every time I play this, after I'm done playing, I feel like I played a light filler card game, which I like. I have tons of those. And I taught a medium weight family game. That's not great. I can just play a fun, light card game filler and teach the equivalent number of rules for that, as opposed to having to explain, you need this many to trigger this power, and then you need that many more to trigger that power twice. You can also discard a card to trigger this power. Let me explain that 5 times, and then this other one that behaves differently that lets you copy a thing. I want to go over all those powers, right, for everybody, but then once you actually start playing, it's like, oh, play a card, draw a card, discard this, and draw more cards. Take your cards, give you some cards back. I mean, literally, the only thing missing here to be a through and through light card game is a power that makes you skip a turn. That's the only thing that's missing like that. The blocking of a column for you can't play there. That's not quite skip a turn, but almost, that's kind of how it feels. But you teach all this stuff. So ultimately, I thought the game was just really light, too light, and sort of things just happen, and you don't really feel like you are, ultimately someone wins, and then you're done, and you go, okay. And I've never played with anyone that once we are done feels like, I did that. Look at that. Look what I did. Someone just wins because you get to enough cards and somebody takes it. Not exciting, I guess. I like the look of the game. I think it's a cutely made, nicely constructed idea. There's just no space, I think, out there for this kind of game. There's too many other games that will achieve the same sort of light, pick-on-you sort of feel. And there are games that have a little more oomph if you want to teach all these little powers for what you are getting from the game. Games that are going to give you more interesting choices. Not so, again, the sound and fury signifying nothing is, I think, an apt description of how I felt about this. So there you go. That is Carta Impera Victoria. This is a pass for me. I don't see anybody who would need to get this one. Even if you were curious, I think, by the theme, not really there. The look, whatever. There's lots of good-looking games. The idea of messing with each other. There's games that do that better than this. This is a pass from me. So there you go. That's my thoughts on this one. Thanks for checking this out. I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.